Hey guys, this is called the Podcasters Chat Room. I am Spencer Techspence Alessi, and joining me is Sam JustCasual Han. We are just how's it going? Give the proverbial wave to the audience, so to speak. We're just two guys, two podcasters, video game nerds, esports fans, just talking about what we're doing in the podcasting arena. And this is kind of just a chat between Sam and I that you guys are looking in on. Nothing really, we're not really producing content for an audience, so to speak, but we thought that maybe this would be interesting for people to kind of see the conversations that two aspiring and podcasters are. So, Sam, I hope you're having a good night. And
hmm
I think it's been a busy week for you. I've seen a lot of stuff on Twitter and everything. So, how's it
Yeah,
going, man?
I'm doing well. Just fair warning, I do have a cough drop in my mouth. I figure it's better that I have this cough drop in my mouth rather than coughing into the mic. So I'll try
So,
not.
you hear that?
Yeah, exactly.
It's a
I'm
cough
like
drop.
I'm trying not to move this cough drop around a ton in my mouth, but um, I know it can get annoying. I'm sorry for anyone that's listening, but I think it's for the best again because you don't want to hear
Enter,
me coughing.
enter the that's what she said jokes and all all those funny
There you go.
NSFW jokes there.
But yeah, I'm doing all right. It was kind of a busy week, but it was actually more of a chill week for me. I think coming off of us being sick and then just um, kind of trying to keep things a little open. Actually, I take that back. I was pretty busy with some stuff. Um, and because of that, it took me away from podcast responsibility or doing extra stuff for extracurricular podcasting. So
Right.
just keeping up with like the normal stuff that I've been doing with the Lola podcast and things like that. But it was kind of nice having a little bit of time off, not like worrying about things 24/7, but at the same time it was really useful and productive for me to just kind of think about things a little more and dwell on things and kind of like, chew over ideas that I've had rather than like keep trying to do on every single idea and just like grind out all day, every minute, every hour, every second that I have kind of thing. So that was pretty nice. I thought that was pretty
It's
productive.
it's kind of nice to. I feel the same way. I was working a lot this week, but I did have some downtime with the long weekend here to chill out and kind of let some of my thoughts and what I've been working on fester and kind of stew a little bit. And it's kind of nice when you grind and grind and grind to just have a few days off or a week off or something to kind of let everything kind of soak in and take everything all in and try and figure out things that you're doing.
Yeah, I definitely think that, you know, getting over that first hurdle where it's like, oh, you know what? I really need to start like working and hustling, right? Because I'm trying to achieve something that's kind of extraordinary. I don't know if that's the right word, but very different, I guess, not the norm.
Hmm.
And after you get over that hurdle of like actually doing stuff, then there's the other hurdle of like, okay, we have to be realistic about your time because you're gonna burn out and stuff like that. And I've been in a place where I've been like, just I feel guilty every time I'm not doing something. I'm not being productive. Every time I'm like watching Netflix, I'm like, oh, if I didn't watch two of the episodes, I could have got recorded a podcast, or I could have done an interview, or I could have,
Yeah.
done social media and stuff like that. So it's really hard to like balance that, and it's something that I'm trying to work hard on right now.
That's funny. It's funny that you mention it because all of the like DC Comics and TV shows or the superhero shows are releasing this week for the
hmm
fall for their fall series like Supergirl, Legends of Tomorrow, Flash, Arrow, all four shows that I really really like watching.
hmm
And I'm finding myself like, man, I really want to watch those. And just today I was thinking like I had a lot of downtime today. I was playing with the family and kids and everything. And there were moments of time where I just wasn't doing anything. Like my phone was charging, I didn't have it on me. It was just like laying on the couch and I'm like,
uh
I'm freaking bored. Like
uh
I was so bored. Like my kids were all playing by themselves. Like they didn't want anything to do with me. I was like, man, this is boring. And I was just sitting there and I'm like, I'd rather be doing something than just sitting.
hmm
And I realized that when I was watching a lot of TV before I started my podcast, it was the same kind of escape that I get doing the podcast. So
Hmm.
I guess in a weird way, what I'm saying to myself is that I need that escapism. So whether I'm watching a TV show or if I'm doing something extracurricular like a podcast or doing this stuff, that helps me, I think, kind of in my day to day of just, getting through things.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely a tough balance, but I think it's a continual process that will never ever be figured out.
Yeah, I mean, if there was a magic recipe, or
Hmm.
secret, it's like with business. If business was just math, yeah, like it would have been a game over a long time ago.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. So let's jump into the first topic that we wanted to talk about. Video versus audio. I know you were thinking about starting to put out more video recorded versions of your podcast, right?
Yeah, so I had this idea that I was going to, like we talked about before, was drop down to one episode a week and do video and put more video production behind it. And then I had some video quarrels. I had some issues when I recorded my last episode with video, and it kind of took away from the quality of the audio. And it could have been the platform I was using. I was using Skype, which obviously isn't the best.
Mm-hmm.
There's other things that are better, like Discord, which is where Sam and I are recording this on Discord right now. So this has put renewed faith in me in the video. I'll have to see and stew over this a little bit. But the other reason why am having second guesses about video is that I originally wanted to do this podcast to do something different, right? So I didn't want to do just the same old face cam to face cam
Mm-hmm.
with an
Mm-hmm.
overlay kind of thing that everybody does. And I didn't have a good way to differentiate that because the design and style couldn't be different. There's really no way unless you have some animated graphics and you do stuff like that, which is a lot to produce. And then, you got to look at the time and the return on that. And then the second thing was I'm not an expert in anything yet. You know what I mean? Like I have knowledge in certain games and stuff like that and of
Mm-hmm.
just, an onlooker into the industry, but I don't have a particular expertise that will draw an audience in. So I thought that I'm thinking now that maybe video isn't the right way to go because I can't differentiate it. And if it's more work to do it, then it's probably not worth it. So I'm just curious on your thoughts, Sam, on because you've done video podcasts and you've done audio as well. I'm curious of your take on that.
Yeah, I mean, when we say I did video podcasts, I think barely, right? The biggest thing that we've done is record our faces on Twitch and take that video and post that onto YouTube. And excuse me. And I was glad that you started posting your stuff on YouTube because ultimately it's like a lot of attention goes to YouTube, right? Not many people
Right.
in the esports or gaming industry are really into podcasts. They might not be aware of podcasts, and therefore, typically a younger audience is on YouTube versus podcasts on iTunes and stuff like that. So I think it's really, really important to be on just where the eyes or ears are, and that's YouTube, And if you're only on iTunes, then you miss out on people that are using the Google app or like people that don't have iOS phones. They're using, Samsung Galaxy that uses Android, so you don't have the iTunes podcast app or something like that. So just being available everywhere is kind of important and just being found. And because of that, I think it's really important to post onto YouTube. And I like what you're doing. You're just posting a still image and bam, there's your audio. So if someone's at work and unfortunately you're blocked at my workplace, so that really sucks that I can't listen to it there. People can just listen to it while they work, and they don't actually have to watch it. People that are watching mine where we have our faces, if people want to watch something, they can. But there's no value added unless they like picking up off of our facial cues or they want to see our faces and they want to see us talking because sometimes you can get really distracted just listening to audio.
Yeah, I think it's like when you see a streamer on Twitch that doesn't have a face cam, most often than not, they're not that engaging and they don't have that many viewers watching, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I think of it like that. So it's like, well, it adds a connection to have video. So there's that. But then again, like you said, if it's audio only, you're not missing anything. You can just click play and listen to it.
Yeah. And what is it? I have been posting on YouTube our episodes pretty much regularly since episode maybe like 150 something, and we're on episode like 160. So I haven't been doing this that regularly because there have been a lot of technical difficulties. There's a lot of extra time you have to put into it. We've been streaming for a while, and then we stopped, and then we started again. So like there are lots of technical difficulties that just slow the process down, which really sucks. So sometimes you just have to bite the bullet and do it, or you realize it's not worth it. And luckily for our content, we don't really need the visual to bring anything extra, right? It's not like we're showing a clip and then talking about it where people need to see the clip, right? Or we're not like have a whiteboard and we're drawing stuff on it. That's not the case. We could add that to our podcast. You know, you can definitely do like that nice word art stuff that happens, or you could put in like references to gameplay that we might be referring to and stuff like that. But that's a lot more work. It's a lot of work when I could be making a second episode, right, of just audio format. So it's definitely a struggle. It's a big struggle figuring out what to do. And luckily for us, I'm not sure if it's luckily, I'm not sure that's the right word, but we don't necessarily need the video, but we need to be on the video platform. That's the weird thing.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think when you mentioned not way back, but like a month or two ago to put stuff on YouTube, I definitely do see a handful of views, like anywhere between like 2 or 5 to a couple dozen or something like that. Mm-hmm. So that it is drawing views. And I have had people tell me that, hey, do you post on YouTube? Because I don't listen to podcasts, so they find it there. So
and when I hear that, I'm like, what does that even mean? Because you're just not installing the app, because you're not going to be watching the video anyway. You're like, I don't listen to podcasts. I'm like, you can go to the website, click on it. You could go to iTunes and click on it. That kind of like irks me when I hear people say that, but I'm like, oh.
And if you have iOS, it's the app is already installed. You just open it.
Yeah, but we have to appeal to the masses, and someone just needs to search you, and YouTube search engine is amazing. I mean, it's like the number 1 search engine now.
Yeah, and something that I was watching that you probably interest you. I was just before we came on, I was watching this thing on Creative Live with this really famous photographer. I forget his name. It's like Von Juan or something like that.
Okay.
He's an award-winning photographer, but he was talking about how things go viral, like how his photography went viral and stuff like that. And he said that I wish I could remember the phrase that he used, but it was a quote that he said was, I think it was, titles make something go viral or something like that. And he showed essentially a photograph of a woman who was chained to a shipwreck underwater. And the title was like "Woman Chained to Shipwreck Underwater," and there was this beautiful photograph. Mm-hmm. And he said that his title before was something that was kind of generic or innocuous. It was like, there's like this trick of how to photograph a woman underwater kind of thing. And it was appealing to photographers because they wanted to learn how to do that technique or produce that kind of shot. But for the masses, it wasn't really. It didn't really resonate, I guess is the word I'm looking for. Sure. Resonate with a broad audience and say, wow, like I want to click on that, or I want to look at that photograph. Mm-hmm. So he changed his titles, and he said that really helped his work go viral, quote unquote, and really helped him specialize the type of work he did. So now when he does work, he's looking for that title, and that's what he's going after because he wants his work to be impactful and reach a lot of people and stuff like that. And that made me think about podcasting. And I'm like, how can I improve the titles of my shows, and how can I produce content that's more focused on things that are unique that I think will have a chance at going viral? Because anything has a chance to go viral, right? Like you've seen stuff all over the internet that has no reason being a viral tweet or a viral share or something like that on Facebook. It has no reason being that, but for some reason it just is, and there's some chemistry that makes that up. Mm-hmm. But that was kind of interesting, I thought, as just a sidebar of what we were just talking about.
Yeah. Actually, that's kind of changed my thought process to the Lola podcast. I've been working with my one of the listeners, he helps out with our graphics, and I've been like talking with him like, how do we get our thumbnails to stand out? And he was like, he's trying to make them very artistic, you know? And I'm like, no, we need to put the stupid white outline around the person or around the figure that everyone else does.
No, right?
And he's like, but everyone's doing it. I'm like, yeah, because it works. And I hate this, but like the goal of the YouTube thumbnail is to hack the system. It's like, we're not trying to be fancy. Once we like, if we don't need to get extra eyes, then yeah, we can do that kind of stuff. So we've been going back and forth, like, what's the important information? How do we make things stand up? And we didn't do the white outline, but we figured some ways around it, and we've been playing with it for a while. And what we ended up doing was just like, the thumbnail is just like 3, 4, 5, like just words that just covers the whole thumbnail. So you know exactly what you're looking at. And yeah. I'm like, this might work. And I wanted to stand out from everyone else's. Like, if I'm scrolling down my subscription page, I want to quickly be like, something stands up, like, oh, that's a Lola podcast video. And whether I want to click it or not, that's, they at least know and they can make that decision, right? And yeah, it's been tricky figuring this stuff out.
I think that's one of the more fascinating parts about all of this is, with YouTube, obviously it's more visual. You can stand out. With podcasts, for us, it's kind of unique because it's purely words, right?
Yeah.
Like, you have your channel art, and there's stuff you can do with that, with your iTunes art and stuff, and to make that stand out. But, you know, for our podcasts, you know, I don't know how much search or like organic search traffic we're getting on the Apple Podcast. It's maybe more someone looking directly for our podcast.
Yeah.
But with podcasts, it's just words. So that's where I think the virality needs to come in, like creating buzzworthy or like really unique titles for episodes. And the other side of it was going back to the YouTube videos. I put out a vlog that was kind of Casey Neistat style.
Okay, that's cool.
I wanted to create two things. I wanted to create a vlog, or refresh my vlog and start doing it more regularly. And it just happened to be World Teachers Day and National Do Something Nice Day. Okay. So I played off those two themes a little bit, and I tried to take my best attempt at like a Casey Neistat type of vlog.
Interesting. I had to check that out.
So yeah, so I did that, and I was debating if I want to put text in my thumbnail or not for YouTube. But I was like, do I put text and like do it like everybody else does and do like the kind of hypey thing? Or do I want to do the case like pure Casey Neistat style? Because his thumbnails are just pictures. Yeah, they're just like pictures from his episode. So I went the latter route. I just did an image for my episode, and an image was like me going like this. It was like.
Okay.
So it was kind of funny. Like I wanted something that was kind of like somebody would scroll through and be like, what is he saying there? Like what? So, but I'm definitely when I put more vlogs out, I'm definitely gonna, I think, experiment with stuff. Okay. Like text and funny colors and stuff.
Yeah. So yeah, I kind of jumped off topic talking about those YouTube thumbnails, but yeah, with the titles, this is what I meant to go this way. I've been thinking about formatting my episodes differently because, you know, we talk about League of Legends, so sometimes the topics can go like really wide, especially if we have like a listener question episode where we have like 5 different questions that are like completely unrelated. It's really hard to make a title that works for that unless you're picking like the one topic or 2 topics that were like really, really clickbaity or really, really hot or that were really good conversations. So I was thinking like, oh, I should just split that episode into 5 episodes and release them that are 15 minutes, 5 minutes, 20 minutes long. And it doesn't create that much more work. But at the same time, like, I feel like when you have like different topics, what I could do is, or if I'm a listener, I can be like, I don't care about those first 2 topics, but I can listen to the episode 3, 4, and 5 of this because I care about those. So if they're not interested in those first 2 topics, if they actually listened to it when it was 1 episode, they'd get bored and turn it off. And then they wouldn't get to the rest of the content. And they wouldn't get value from that content, and I wasted their time. And I'm like, I think this is like a genius way to... I shouldn't say genius. That's like super... like, but I thought it was a really creative way to approach this problem. And I like that I'm thinking this way because I wouldn't think this way a year ago, right? Because I'm starting to understand how to market, brand, and just how to like thinking more about hacking the system, right? And I was even thinking, and I've been renaming my episodes too, organizing my episodes to try to fit a centered theme, right? So one thing we've been doing is like we've been going through the 5 roles in League of Legends, like how to play top lane, how to play jungle, and it was just simply the title were really easy, how to play jungle, because like you said, that's a very broad topic, not a very specific topic, and I think that's like anyone that's interested in jungling in the game, they would click on that rather than someone that's looking for like how do I itemize the best as a jungler, right? And some people don't care about that, so they wouldn't click it. But how to jungle is something very broad that everyone could get into. So,
yeah. I think that's a definite strategy. I've seen it in a lot of different places. I've seen Larry King's show. He does these 20 or 30-minute interviews with his guests, but he breaks the questions up, and on his YouTube channel, you'll see if you follow him, like he's got like a minute and a half here, 2 minutes here, 3 minutes there, and it's just every question is a little video segment, and then he's got the whole episode on. I think the whole episode you can only watch on CBS or whatever channel it's on, but that's what he does for that. And Gary Vee used to do this. I don't know if he still does. He used to ask Gary Vee, and he would take the questions, and like every question would be a video. And it would be a video. So yeah, I think from a utility standpoint, you're pretty much making a class, right? Like you're pretty much making a how do you play League of Legends, and you're making it in like little video chunks. So I think for sure, if the intent is to educate and stuff like that, I think having it in more of a specific chunk makes sense for sure.
I think for your format, it doesn't really make sense, but you get around it by making your highlight reels like of the week. And I think that makes it better. And I think, now I'm wondering, maybe you need to change your description or change the title of This Week in Highlights and make it like almost like What is Esports? Like you had that What is Esports episode, right?
Yeah.
Like instead of maybe the whole week in highlights needs to be revolved around a specific topic. So that could be like the hustle and grind or something like that. And then you need a better, more descriptive title than that. But then it could be about like the common theme that you found in 3 guests, where it's like they talked about like how hard it is where you have to put in the work, right?
Yeah, that would definitely be interesting. It's something I've been thinking about of trying to hack and do. And one thing I noticed was that when I put Call of Duty in my title, I noticed on YouTube, I got to check again actually, but I noticed that my YouTube videos got like a hit, because like an increase in numbers, and I think it's because I put the name of the game in like the title, but I guess really not that many more than I normally would.
You didn't put the name of the streamer on there though, on the title.
I put Call of Duty in that streamer grind with STDX.
Oh, just kidding.
Yeah, it's at the end.
Yeah.
This time.
I think that's okay.
But it didn't get that many more than I thought. I thought for some reason, maybe I was looking at the wrong video or something, but I thought like putting the name of the video game that the person I was interviewing plays.
Yeah. It's a running joke on the Lola podcast because there is a podcast called the Baghdad Software Podcast. It's not in English, but they have one episode called League of Legends. And that episode is always higher on like the list than like most of the League of Legends podcasts. And it's like so painful to deal with. And it actually brings the Baghdad Software Podcast like higher on the ranking than us. And it kills me.
I'm actually going to search right now.
It's been a running joke for like 2 years now, or 3 years almost. So we actually tried to name one of our episodes League of Legends. We're like waiting for like a really good episode, and we're like, oh, okay, we're gonna call that one League of Legends and see what happens. But I don't know. I haven't checked it in a while, but it's painful, and I think that's how important like using that name is really, really important.
Yeah, for sure.
And SEO is just really important as well. But the pain. Yeah, actually, if I search League of Legends right now under podcasts, one of them is The episode is called League of Legends, and it's by Charles Deet. Podcast is Games UX. So I don't know. I don't know, but it's painful. Yeah, I guess it might not be on the list as high anymore. Maybe Apple's listening to our podcast. Oh, it's on there. It's on the list. Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, it's weird when I. Yeah.
What happens if you search Call of Duty?
That's a good question. I'm gonna search Call of Duty.
Are there Call of Duty podcasts?
Yeah, there's people that do. Well, there's people that do content. I don't know if there's necessarily a Call of Duty podcast. Call of Duty. Well, when I type in Call of Duty, the first one I find is from somebody called Liquid Church, and it looks like it's a Christian podcast. And then there's...
Oh, yeah, I guess that makes sense. That's funny.
Yeah, there's some weird stuff. I don't know. But not like you and I would expect. It's interesting to search through it and see like the different games. Because there's definitely podcasts for like every game, but they might not necessarily be on Apple Podcasts, or they might be called something that's not
Call of Duty.
Like what you and I would expect. Yeah.
Yeah, you definitely need like in like the subtitle area, you need to have the game that you're talking about. But then in the title like of the podcast, I wouldn't use it. And I say that as a person that 3 out of the 5 words of our podcast is League of Legends. So, but yeah.
But so the title thing, well, talking about audio and video ties into what I was talking about earlier with your Medium article was the benefit of audio to esports and how esports can take advantage of audio. And you had a really unique perspective on it. You had a number of bullet points that I thought were really interesting. And number 2, I thought was really good. All of them I thought were really important, really on point, and everything I agreed with. Nice. But number 2 was particularly good.
Yeah, okay. So what Spencer is talking about is I wrote a Medium article today actually while I was on the toilet, which is kind of funny at work because I was trying to kill time. I've been wanting to get onto Medium and like put out content, especially after I saw Spencer do it. I'm like, oh, if he's doing it, I have to do it, you know? And I was like, what am I going to talk about? And this thought it's something that I've talked about a few times now with like some people that I've been trying to get some work with, and just like talking a little bit more about podcasting with just people in general, like even my parents. So I've like practiced saying this a few times over and over again, and it's like starting to get really internalized. So I decided to write an article about why esports needs to be making produced podcasts. And the second point that he's talking about are podcasts are popular amongst paying consumers. And it was a stat that I saw maybe like 2 or 3 years ago. And I was super, super cautious about it because I didn't really believe it. But they said like it was like 60% conversion rates off of like paid stuff. I'm like, I don't really believe that. I don't know how they got that stat. And like statistics for podcasts even now are complete garbage right now. It's hard to really figure out what's going on, and people want more stats on it. I think iTunes is working on it, and I think they put out some stuff, some additional things. But the audience for podcasts in general, not just gaming and esports, but in general, is like a little higher educated than the norm. They have a higher career than the norm. They're usually professional individuals that are like 21 and up. Businessmen that travel a lot or that are on planes or have long commutes, these kind of things. And because of that, you have an audience that has money, that want to spend money, and they're finding stuff to spend money on. At least this is my interpretation off of like what I've read and the things that I've found about it. Yeah. And I'm like, in esports in esports, at least for League of Legends, the target demographic is like 16. The age 16-year-old males. So it's like, it's hard because they're using their parents' money maybe, or they don't have as much money to throw around. But there are plenty of gamers that are above are in the working age that are above 30, that are dads that have money, or like young professionals that are just out of college that are working engineering jobs or computer science jobs that want to throw money at this kind of stuff. And I don't think they're being targeted. And in the esports scene when it comes to podcasts, because there aren't really podcast brands aren't making podcasts. And I'm just like, come on, guys. I know this isn't like a huge demographic, but you will have higher conversion rates with these people that have money than 14-year-olds that have to steal like money out of their mom's purse, you know, or that are working at McDonald's or working, you know, as a waiter at some restaurant. Like, they just don't have the money to drop $20 without thinking about it, right?
Yeah, I think it's what you're saying about the paying consumers or that demographic, I think seems to be pretty accurate from what I've seen. And I think it's unique for esports because, like you said, just because of the demographic it is now, like esports is very young right now. But 5 to 10 years from now, those 13-year-olds are going to be 23. They're going to be 30. They're going to be of those age where they're higher spending consumers. So I think it's a smart bet to bet, for lack of a better word, on podcasts for a number of reasons. One of those is, you know, somebody that we both follow, Gary Vee, talks a lot about audio. He's really passionate about audio and it being more of a mainstream thing than it is now with the Google Home devices, the Amazon Alexas, Siri, all that stuff. It's going to be interesting to see where that goes and how esports can take advantage of some of that. And I think producing podcasts puts you in a good position to do that, because if you're looking at podcasts, what else are you looking at audio wise? And what else can you do? I mentioned, what was it? The Alexa skill. And you wrote back, like, don't you have to pay for it or something like that? And I never researched it yet, but that would be interesting, right? You know, I know that there's some big media companies like IGN, they have an Alexa skill. I looked into it. But from an esports standpoint, I don't think ESL has an Alexa skill. Like, I don't think MLG has an Alexa skill. So esports is really untapped. And also esports is still very misunderstood. There's a lot of misconceptions about it still. And it's such a new and growing industry that I think podcasts have the best chance maybe to break the narrative, so to speak, and introduce people to a world of esports based on people just searching for things in the podcast store or, you know, podcast search or whatever. If they just randomly find it and they click on an article that either has somebody that they know from another podcast on it, that's like crossing worlds, you know, or it's just a title that it's interesting to them and they want to check it out. Or maybe they've played video games their whole lives and like, what is this video game thing? And then they listen to it and they learn about this world of competitiveness and gaming and sports. So I think podcasts definitely have a bright future for sure.
Yeah, I mean, like, I was actually really surprised. So part of what I talked about in there was like Riot's podcast. It made it in the top 100 under gaming, and I was like really surprised that actually that happened, because I was like, oh, people are actually listening to podcasts. I really didn't think they were. And then, you know, I'm looking at Beyond the Rift came out, which is made by two ex-pros, Skara and I'm a Cutie Pie, that are now like full-time streamers or content creators. And their show gets like 20,000, 50,000, 60,000 views on YouTube. And I'm like, that's crazy. And then I'm looking at the latest released episode of The Dive, which is, again, a League of Legends podcast where they take the casters and they're actually talking about topics in League of Legends and esports and Riot Games and stuff like that. And the one that was released a week ago has over 148,000 views. So I'm like, the podcast is just three guys talking around a table. So or four guys, and there's nothing visually stimulating, right? Like we talked about, it's just people talking. So these people are playing this while they're playing the game, and they're just listening to it in the background, maybe zoning in or out, maybe they're watching it. And I'm like, hey, and they actually have it on the podcast platform too. So I'm sure I haven't checked how it ranks there, but I'm sure they're doing really well. there are people looking for this content, and the only reason why they find it is because Riot's a huge corporation, a company, and they're like, hey, we made a podcast, so everyone's like, shoo, let's go check it out, you know? Yeah. I can't even imagine if Immortals made a podcast and like, hey, we have a podcast, go check it out. You know, if they made actually good content that was interesting, boom, like you're going to have Immortals fans, and then people that don't like Immortals but want the content that like the behind the scenes content or whatever that they're providing that TSM doesn't provide, or Optic doesn't provide, or whatever other teams don't provide. So I think there's actually people don't know that they're missing it and that they want it. And someone's like, if you make a actual produced podcast, not just people talking in a round table, you tell a story, which I think audio is an amazing place to tell stories because, again, you can multitask and you don't have to sit and you're not constrained by watching visuals, and you don't have to be good at like the visual storytelling part of it is like just an immensely difficult monster giant you have to deal with versus telling a story with audio. Any decent grandfather can do that just because they've talked a lot and told stories. So a lot of people can tell stories just fine.
Yeah, I think that every professional esports organization should be the place where their fan base goes to learn more about the games that those teams compete in. Like if you have like Echo Fox, for example, let's say they're in a lot of different games. They're in a lot of fighting games. They're in League of Legends. They're in Gears of War. Counter-Strike. They have so many different games they compete in. They should have a content production company that all they do is produce how to be a better League of Legends player, how to be a better Counter-Strike player, how to be a better Street Fighter player, how to be a better Smash player, and produce content, and not just how to be better, but interesting. And they do to some extent, right? Like Liquid does. They have a production company. They're producing content and they're getting better at it. But to your point, every organization should be like, their fans should not be going anywhere else for how to do this in this game or how to do X in this game. Like they're large enough, and they have, especially Echo Fox and, you know, some of these teams that have huge funding behind them, they have the money to do this kind of thing. And, you know, I think that if I was running the show, I would be like, okay, I want our fans to come to our website, or I want them to come to us for everything that they need to know about this game that we're competing in. And I don't want them to go anywhere else.
I mean, think about this. You're playing Counter-Strike. You're trying to hit a specific ranking, and you just can't hit it, right? And then suddenly, Echo Fox is like, hey, here's a 5-part series to get you better at CSGO. And you watched it, something clicked, and you hit that rank at the end of the season. Next time when you have a choice to buy an Echo Fox jersey when it goes on sale, you're going to be like, I love Echo Fox. I never watched their games, but I love them because they made that content, and I got to whatever ranking because of them, because of that video. And then suddenly you're an Echo Fox fan. You don't even know it, and you've been brainwashed by watching like 60 minutes of content over like a 6-part series or something like that. That's genius.
And you do it for free, right? Like it's complete branding for you. It's 100%. We talked about this before with podcasts. You know, you can monetize podcasts, and if you have a really large audience, there's ways you can do it. But for the most part, it's a branding play, right? Like it's complete branding. And that's how I feel about this content stuff, is like, if you produce content of how to be better at this game, or how do you get more skilled at this particular thing, and, you know, how to be a better jungler, and it's produced by Echo Fox, it's all done by them, and it's like the pro players talking about it and you're interviewing them. I think that's the way to go. And I definitely feel like there's definitely more that needs to be done in that arena, and it's a huge opportunity for sure.
I mean, look at this. Echo Fox has a jewel that's like super unique. They have Rick Fox founding their brand, right? Have a podcast about him talking, like sitting in a studio talking for like 30 minutes, 40 minutes, even on his phone, and then they can edit and produce the content around that. Just talking about like, traditional sports and esports and whatever, something about it, right? Stories or whatever. Like,
you know, I'm on this kick, right? Like I've noticed something that some content producers are doing. on podcast, and some of the ways that they're hacking it, I think, are producing like 6-minute podcasts, right? 12-minute podcast, 8-minute podcast, 4-minute podcast. And it's like just a really specific topic or really something that they want to hit home. So to your point with Rick Fox, he could be talking about legacy. I saw a video on, I want to say it was Forbes or something like that. It was like a 6-minute video, or maybe it was even 30 seconds. I don't even remember, but it was just him talking about legacy and how esports is at that point where, professional baseball was, 100 years ago or whenever baseball started. Esports is at that point in time right now. And he was talking about legacy and being a name that's been in it forever. And when you're in a sport, if you're in a sport for a really long time, like the Yankees, and you have a storied history, whether you win the World Series or not, if you've been in the game a really long time, your name is going to stick. Like you've been in the league for a long time. You've, got these accolades and whatnot. So he was talking about legacy in esports, and he was saying that we're 5 or 6 years into something that's going to be 100 years, legacy that's going to exist way beyond himself and, maybe even his son. So, just talking about like for 6 minutes, like let's say he just talked about legacy for 6 minutes and what that means. And
I'd listen to it. Oh my gosh. It's Rick Fox.
Yeah, and 6 minutes for me is like, that's half of my commute. Like I could listen to that on my commute or going to the grocery store. Like that's the things that I think are catchy. I think long form, if done well, is just as good. The half hour, 2 hours is just as good. But I think what I'm curious about, I don't know how well I can experiment with myself, but I'm curious of how well the 6 minute, 12-minute, the 5 to 12-minute, 15-minute episodes do on podcast form.
Yeah, I played with that a little bit because back when I was vlogging, it was because I was doing it while I was driving from work or driving to work, and I have like a pretty short commute, like 10 minutes or so. So one thing I tried to do was I was trying to live stream on Periscope/Twitter, and I was doing a series called No Time But Still Want to Climb, and it was basically like really simple tips that I could talk about for 10 minutes and help people climb in their rank ladder. But I stopped doing that, one, because I kind of got bored of it and I ran out of ideas, and two, like it was actually way too much thinking for when I was driving. Like if I was just vlogging, I just talk whatever, like just talk off my mind, right? But actually trying to teach someone to do something that I'm probably not the best person to talk about it even to them was a bit difficult, and that's why I kind of stopped it. But I think like doing it the first time, I was like, this is good. This is gold. This is what, it's really short, really quick, and gets to the point. And then if anything, that just draws people into listening to the League of Legends Anonymous podcast, right? If like, hey, this guy knows what he's talking about in 5 minutes, I wonder what his hour-long show sounds like, right? So
yeah, it's like you kind of like a gateway drug.
Yeah, exactly. Huh. Yeah. So that medium article, I could talk like for another hour about it, so we should probably move on. But yeah, I really think there's so many reasons that I couldn't even list all of them because I didn't want to get too unorganized and I didn't want to like ramble too much. So many reasons why podcasts need to be the way to go, or brands and esports and games should be investing in podcasts. Like I really think there's almost no excuse. No excuse.
Yeah. And if you're a brand looking at this, like if you're Nike and you want to get into esports podcasts, hit me up at Techspence and at JustCasual9 on Twitter for Sam. So
yeah, we'll hook you up with a nice deal.
Because you never know, like who might be listening to your show,
Yeah, you never know. You never know. We should probably put that at the beginning. Right? We should put it at the beginning. Intro. That's funny. Yeah, that
kind of leads the content and the production piece of it kind of leads into what I was saying we should talk about just briefly is the ESL deal with Hulu, and how they want to produce how they're planning on producing original content for Hulu to produce these esports shows. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
Okay. I'm dying because I keep talking about this and oh gosh, I want to be like the first, and like I'm seeing all these people doing it now. I'm like, no, this was my idea. I didn't act on it. That totally sucks. Kind of lights a fire under
Well,
my ass, but oh
yeah, I
man.
mean, to do what they're doing on Hulu takes a lot of
Sure, sure.
relationships. I mean, putting money aside, right? Like if you have the finances for it, it takes a lot of relationships to
Mm-hmm,
get
mm-hmm.
onto Hulu and to get into that exposure. But I think it's a good first step. Unfortunately, I think what they're doing is good. There's been a lot of I've been reading a lot about today people's comments and seeing what people have to say about it and kind of
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
brewing what I thought myself. And there were some people that made some good points that although they are producing content with or going to be producing content on Hulu, it's not particularly unique. It's all stuff that's been done before. It's not a unique format type of thing. And the way that TV rights work and stuff like that, who knows if they can even produce content that isn't ESL owned, right? So if it's not ESL or DreamHack owned,
Mm-hmm.
can they really produce it, which limits what they can do for some of their content, right? So
Sure.
if it just becomes an ESL highlight reel, is that going to still be interesting for people? I don't know. It depends how they produce it, right? So, but I
That's a
think
good point.
I think it's a good first step. I think getting some content on Hulu where there's clearly a huge audience, I think is a great step. And to your point, what you just said, I'm super jealous too in a way because I want to be in that position where we're able to do these first and kind of things. But you know, things would have to like radically change, I think, in our
Mm-hmm,
lives for
mm-hmm.
that to happen. So I'm okay. Like I'm happy to see it happening. Um, I think it's kind of for me it's a waiting game to see where I'm gonna get my punch in, so to speak. I guess I don't know,
Mm-hmm.
like to use a boxing term, like where I'm gonna get my punch in.
Yeah. While we were talking about this, I'm kind of wondering because I'm sure they reached out to, they were trying to do, YouTube or Twitch or something a little more native to gamers, right? Even I don't know how
Mhm.
popular Hulu is when it stands with like Amazon Video and Netflix, but I mean, they must have had a good deal, or maybe Hulu was the only one that was really interested. I'm not really sure. The one thing I'm worried about, and I think we've talked about this, but advertising to non-gamers, especially the esports scene, like, should we be? I'm kind of on the fence about should we be trying to reach out to people that are outside of gaming and outside of esports and bring them into our world. Um, I'm kind of leaning towards no because I think it's almost like a wasted effort, like trying to preach to people that like don't want to hear or already made their decision about it. The good that comes from is like you get legitimacy, but I don't think because of that, I don't think that means more people play the game or watch it. I'm not convinced of that.
I think I don't know if I don't know if it depends on how you approach it, right? Like I think if you're producing content and you're like pushing it in front of people who clearly don't want to see it, like a demographic that don't, I think that's definitely the wrong strategy. But if you're putting it in the 18 to 35 demographic who watches stuff on Hulu and you have like a little promo for a ESL video that's or a show that's on Hulu right on the platform that you're watching a show on, and it's something that's funny or it shows the character of the demographic that you're trying to hit. I think it has to be case in point. Like I think it just has to be specific to the demographic that you want and specific to the personality. Like people like people who like esports like memes. They like anime. They like funny. They like comedy. It's
Mm.
very comedy driven. It's very tech driven. So you have to really be cognizant of who you're targeting because if you put an ad on, and I don't really remember any of the shows, I don't have a Hulu subscription anymore, but if you put an ad on something that's like in the 18 to 35 demographic or something like that, but it's something that wouldn't, like, I don't know, I'm trying to think of something like a cooking show, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
if you have a cooking show, but then you in that cooking show you put like a 15-second spot of this esports moment, like I don't know if that's really going to resonate. But if
Yeah.
it's like a car show, if it's like custom cars or like there's some garage show or something like where people buy cars and fix them up, like that has a wide demographic. It's going to be not only 18 to 35, it's going to be like 18 to 65 probably or older, because there's grown men and women who like tweaking cars and like they
Mm-hmm.
just are into cars. So there's going to be a wide demographic. But I think that's a good audience to you can kind of transition over, because with to me the thought of customizing a car is kind of like it's kind of like an adolescent endeavor to me, because a lot of, like in my youth, like I really liked customizing my car. Like I got a subwoofer, I got the underglow, and all the I liked tricking out my car. And I think that's kind of a youthful thing that people like to do. And I feel like video games is kind of in the same thing. It's a youthful thing that kids do. And I think that the crossover between something like a car show and video games makes a little bit more sense than like a cooking show or
Sure.
Housewives of Los Angeles or something like that. So I think you have to be smart how you do it. But I think we should expose the industry to outsiders, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we have to be smart how we do it.
Sure. Okay.
Hopefully that rant kind of made sense. It kind of
No, it
made
did.
sense
It
in
did.
my
It
head.
did. I got it. I got it. Um, is there anything else you wanted to talk about with this news?
No, I think that's it. I think it's good news, more or less, and I have to wait and see how it turns out.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad to see, the Immortals team being part of that, because that's another way that a team is finding finances. That is something that's
Yeah,
very hard to do for teams and brands.
that's actually a really good point. Is broadcast rights. Hopefully, and we don't know how much, we don't know the details of that deal, but hopefully they get some sort of good exposure and compensation for that, because that, like you said, will be an interesting type of revenue. If it actually goes really well, then people are going to be like knocking down ESL's door, be like, hey, make a TV show with us. Like, it's going to be really popular.
Hey, Techspence and JustCasual, make a TV show for us. An audiobook for us.
We got it.
Yeah. All right. Is there anything else you want to talk about? I think
No, I think that's it.
we're good. All right, so that's another episode of the Podcasters Chat Room. It's been fun, and so we'll do this next week.
It's been real.
All right.